On this week's Mailbag Monday, 'tis the season. The trade deadline season, that is, as the San Diego Padres made their first major acquisition of this deadline stretch, acquiring Jason Adam from the Tampa Bay Rays. What they gave up, and it was quite the haul. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about, obviously, Jason Adam himself, what he brings to the team, some other angles that you might not expect having to do with this trade and its repercussions for the future, and of course, the series against the Orioles this weekend. Manny Machado making Dan Clark look like a fool. A lot to talk about. Let's get to it. Woo woo pow!
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, July 29th. July flew by real fast, man. As always, I'm your host with sometimes and occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with my baseball-related work over at Just Baseball, among many other places, but Just Baseball, you can find my current writing, including some of the Padres deadline targets, most of which have already been scooped up by other teams. You can go check that out, as well as my new podcast, Baseball versus the World, about evergreen, fun baseball topics like drafting fictional baseball players, who won the X-Men, what's their history with baseball, and many, many more that I don't feel like getting into because this is Padres, guys. Duh. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno again, Javiiipeno, the best handle in the game, and at LO_Padres for updates on the show. Today's episode is going to be a fun one, guys. Why? Because there is a lot to talk about. A lot happened this... It's funny because a lot happened this week when it comes to, like, the world. And I'm not going to get into it, obviously. But, like, this has been a long month, and it was certainly a long week, and it was certainly a long weekend for the Padres, and in a good way. There's a lot to talk about, and we're going to start off talking about Jason Adam, their first major trade deadline acquisition. Obviously, they did Luis Arraez and Dylan Cease, but in terms of the deadline, this is their first major one, and hopefully, by the time you guys are listening to this episode, they didn't make another acquisition and make me have to, feel like this episode is already late, all right? So hopefully that doesn't happen. Preller, just wait until, at least, 10 a.m. You know what I mean? Well, give us that much. Let us wake up and stuff and process things. Today's episode, guys, though, is brought to you by SupplyHouse.com. It is a reliable way to get parts fast. Shop for your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. Let us begin. Let's start with the big news, all right? Let's start first with Jason Adam. We got to talk all about him. And here's the thing. Full trade that happened yesterday. It went down pretty early in the morning, which was interesting. I just feel like I'm used to AJ Preller making, moves at night or, right when I least expect it, I guess. I mean, I guess the morning would be least expected, but I don't know. It just feels like that's not usually the time that I'm ready, especially because here on the East Coast, right, that's, a lot earlier on the West Coast for Preller, I guess, right? So the trade, obviously, the Padres received reliever Jason Adam from the Tampa Bay Rays. We'll talk about him for sure in a second. And they gave up right-handed pitcher Dylan Lesko, who was the Padres' number 3 prospect and number 76 overall on the MLB.com's top 100 list, and also on a lot of other top 100 lists. Outfielder Homer Bush Jr., Padres' number 8 prospect, and a third one, J.D. Gonzalez, catcher, Padres' number 12 prospect. Wow. Okay, so first of all, I want to just say... And by the way, when we get into the mailbag, some of you made this point too. Crazy seller's market going on right now, including for relievers, including for rental relievers. The Philadelphia Phillies gave up some pretty major, not major Golden Egg Jackson Merrill tier of prospects, but they gave up a lot of assets for Carlos Estevez, who I've talked about on the show, and he's only a rental. Right, so it makes you wonder, there's relievers are flying off the shelves right now for a lot more value than I'm used to. And that's one of the things we've talked about on this show is that's why I wasn't super concerned about the bullpen, because I feel like that's usually something that you could put a Band-Aid over, you can make some adjustments and kind of get some decent guys in exchange, right? You don't have to necessarily go for your Mason Millers or, in Padres terms, your Josh Haders all the time, right? You could just get solid guys. And let me tell you, though, the Padres gave up a haul. My first reaction to this, when I first heard it, was, wow, this is nuts. I think we knew that AJ Preller was ready to deal. We knew that. There's still questions. I mean, we still got a day before the deadline ends about whether or not Ethan Salas and Leo DeVries are truly untouchable the way that it's been reported. I hope so. I'd like to keep the guys that might have potential to be all-stars at some point in the future. My other reaction to this was, in regards to Homer Bush, I was surprised that they also had to give up Homer Bush. That was kind of crazy too. Or one or the other. I'm surprised you had to give up this many prospects for a reliever. In general, I don't care who the reliever is. Usually that's just pretty rare in my experience anyway. So I was a little bit surprised by that. The second thing I want to talk about is, does this signal anything with the Padres going forward? Don't worry, we're getting into Jason Adam in just a second. Does this signal a bunch of things? Number one, that Preller ain't never going to change. Right? This man is always going to give up prospects, and we should stop hoping for that. And I personally hope for it because they've been giving up prospects for impact players in the present way too often, and it does not always coincide with consistent winning. The Padres have only won more than 85 games once under AJ Preller, and their max was 89. And the manager that led them there was fired. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty here. And I will also say that I liked Lesko as a prospect. I really did. I think that this guy has some really great potential. The good news is that I do think Dylan Lesko is the type of pitcher that, because he was adding some new pitches, his slider that he incorporated reportedly, heading into this minor league season, that things seem to have changed with him, I will say. So while I do like his upside, it does seem, at the very best for Padres fans, it does seem like he was a little bit away and that it was going to take a lot longer to hopefully get to his potential. And considering Preller's job may be on the line, doesn't shock me at all that Lesko is the one that was going to be dealt. I'm just really surprised that they also had to give up a Homer Bush and even throw in a JD Gonzalez. That was really surprising for me. But it does make sense because Jason Adam does have years of control. He is under contract, under control until 2027. So you get a high impact reliever. I get it. And maybe part of the thing that we're doing here, right, is we're saying you trade for a reliever. If this was the haul they gave up for Mason Miller, or if they gave it up for Yami Garcia, someone who's like really elite and is a closer, right? Maybe everyone would be like, okay, Jason Adam doesn't have that vibe because he's never necessarily been an all-star before, even though he's been a very effective pitcher for a few years now, right? So maybe that's part of it, is that he just hasn't been put in the role. But for me, it's also, he's 32 years old. I don't love the trade. Before we talk about Jason Adam, though, I do want to mention, I'm wondering what this signals about the Padres going forward. I put out a YouTube short reaction yesterday where I brought this up. And I think some people might have misconstrued what I was saying in regards to, does this mean they're done with starting pitching? No, what I'm wondering is, if the whole problem with this team that we're thinking about right now is their budgetary constraints, what are they going to be able to do in the future? You've got Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove as question marks. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying going forward. Dylan Lesko was never going to appear this season. I'm wondering, does this signal that they're ready to make some... Because as of right now, at the end of next season, it's kind of just Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove that you've kind of got as your starting pitchers. And then maybe by next year, maybe a Robbie Snelling, their last remaining top pitching prospect, is called up at some point. Maybe that's what it is. I'm wondering if this signals that they're going to be ready either at the end of this season or next season to retain one of Michael King or Dylan Cease. Because if you do that, it makes a lot more sense to give up that top pitching prospect, since you're like, well, whatever, here's what we're hoping Dylan Lesko can be. We're hoping he can be the other Dylan Cease, or we're hoping he can be Michael King. If that's the calculus here, I do like the move a little bit more. That's something that we're just going to have to see about. And again, we're going to have to see if Lesko's anything. In fairness, before people bring it up, while I do think it's a big haul, I'm more disappointed from just an asset giving up management for you to be giving all that up for a reliever. That being said, I remember when Luis Patino was given up, and that was a top pitching prospect. He turned out to be nothing. So maybe the Padres are selling high and we don't know it because prospect rankings haven't necessarily been updated yet. And maybe Lesko, his ceiling isn't as high as people once thought. So that's the thing. Now, though, let's talk about Jason Adam really quickly. This guy's really, 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 really good. At 4 out of the last 5 years, this guy has had a strikeout rate above 30%. And this year, it's 27.8%. He's very, very good. He's in the 96th percentile in terms of whiff rate as well. This guy's a beast. And the fact that you have him under control for a while is really good. Also, if you're wondering if like his expected stats or anything are really bad, he's had some pretty good numbers there as well. 2.49 ERA. His FIP is 3.34. He misses bats a lot. His slider especially, has an immaculate amount of movement to it. And he just looks filthy a lot of times. And in fact, his slider, if I'm not mistaken, it has a 49.2% whiff rate. I think that's what made Preller interested in this. Him saying, all right, I can't get Mason Miller, which, by the way, him giving this up, Folks, I really think he was ready to do the Mason Miller thing. It was reported a long time ago, but I think him going on the IL made Preller go, no. Okay, never mind. So he wanted a reliever with control. Interesting enough, if you look at his pitching repertoire, the whiff rate has gone up on all of his pitches. And I think that might have interested Preller. Last year, 33% whiff rate on his changeup. This year, 41%. Last year on his four-seamer, 33.5%. That actually went down this year, but stick with me. His sweeper last year, 38.2% whiff rate. This year, it is a 43% whiff rate. And his slider is basically entirely new from last year. He barely threw it, and it's got a 49.2% whiff rate. To give a little bit of a... I know that this is totally different, but it reminds me a little bit of when they acquired Joe Musgrove, where Joe Musgrove added new things, and that's what made him a huge trade target. So maybe Preller actually targeted someone that was going to be talked about a lot more, and maybe he targeted him, and he wasn't Jason Adam wasn't the obvious one, maybe necessarily on the market. So maybe that's what he was thinking. He was thinking whiff rate went up on all the pitches. He added a new pitch, and it's great. Maybe that's what he's thinking of. For Joe Musgrove, when he was becoming a pitching like trade candidate back with the Pirates, he started developing a curveball that generated a lot of whiff rate. So maybe that's what's happening here. I don't know. It could be interesting. I don't know what I know. But overall, I think that the trade is, it's okay, because I still think you're giving up way too many assets for a reliever. And in general, that is my rule, because relievers are extremely volatile. Not too long ago, this guy had a 5.91 ERA in 2021. Now, don't get me wrong, besides that, he's been pretty dang good, right? He's had 2 blow-up years that kind of throw off his career numbers a bit. But all in all, I still think he's a very good reliever, and they needed him, and they're going for it. And if Preller's job is really on the line, it does not shock me that he's going to give up the prospect that might have been ready in 3 years. And also, as we all know, Preller regenerates, man. He's like Wolverine. I got the shirt on still, actually. Boom. If anyone could see it on the video feed. Boom. There you go. He just regenerates prospects like nothing. So Cash Mayfield, I'm looking forward to when he is going to be like a top 60 prospect by the end of the season all of a sudden. It's just what Preller seems to do. But folks, it's not just about Jason Adam. We got to talk about the Orioles, and we got to answer some mailbag questions. We're not going to hone in too much on the Orioles series because, frankly, there's other interesting things going on right now. But nonetheless, we shall talk about it. But first, folks, I want to take a second to talk to you about the thing. I just talked about my shirt, man. And my shirt, that ain't even like, that's just the surface level when it comes to building an immaculate fit, ladies and gentlemen. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you feel really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. With this Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they do all the shopping for you. That's right, if you're having trouble making decisions, because Lord knows I do. Sometimes I'd be looking at like, look at my Pikachu guy. Not clothing related, but I remember deciding between him and another figurine for like an hour. You know what I mean? It can be really hard to make these decisions, and they help you out. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. You just give your stylist your size, style, and budget preferences. You can order boxes, get what you want, how you want it, no subscription required, and they send 5 just for me plus pieces plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. You just keep what works and send back the rest. It is very, very easy, very, very fun. And I don't know what you're waiting for. Oh yeah, by the way, shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. How about that? Folks, Stitch Fix is as good as it sounds. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $20 off your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of signing up. Offer does not include kids fixes, but go check that bad boy out. And just like that, everybody, we are back, thriving and vibing on this week's Locked On Padres podcast. It's an extra chunky one, as you can tell by that long first segment, talking about the Padres' first acquisition. Hey, it's going to be interesting. Look, the guy's really good. All of a sudden, it's like, you get Monahan, you get Jason Adam, you get Robert Suarez, you get Jeremiah Estrada. All of a sudden, it's like, cool. We don't have to have that 6-inning guy that freaks us out the same way anymore, right? So that is really good, and the years of control is nice too. So again, I don't hate it. I just still feel like, man, relievers can be volatile. But again, the way I was kind of alluding to before, maybe this was the guy on the market that people should have been targeting, right? His Baseball Savant page looks great as well. Maybe that's what Preller was doing here. Maybe this is going to end up being like a move where we look back and like, wow, yeah, we were overhyping some of the rental players, and he went out and got the guy that was actually better than all of them. Maybe, who knows? Anyway, this weekend series, the Padres take it 2-1. They do lose the last game of the series, which we're going to talk about first before we get to party. The Padres lose this one by a score of 8-6, and it starts with one Sir Randy Vasquez, who had been doing pretty okay for a while. People kept saying Randiego and all that stuff. 2 innings, 6 earned runs on 4 hits, 4 walks, 2 Ks. Again, Randy Vasquez had actually been like pretty okay basically for all of July. Like, he'd been doing the job basically since that Philly start when he gave up 12 hits. He's been okay since then. He needs work, though. He really does. He needs work because almost all of his pitches, he's going to be due for this stuff. When you're giving up as much hard hit rate contact as he does, you're not generating enough whiffs as we would like. Yes, he's got good control, usually. Yes, he walked 4 in this game. That shows he was a mess. But to me, Randy Vasquez has shown that he needs more time practicing. And I still think that Johnny Brito, out of those like, you know, filler options, I'll call them, that's kind of mean, but you get my point, from that trade. I think that Johnny Brito is the one with more potential, and I think that he's been working on things in the minors. I think Randy Vasquez could be a reliever at some point, and frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if they are trying to make him become that at some point, but this was a really bad start for him, gets absolutely torched, and that's it. But it wasn't all that amazing on the Orioles side of things either. 4 2/3 for Albert Suarez, the brother of Robert Suarez. The Padres hit him for 3 earned runs on 5 hits, and they also are able to get to Jacob Webb for 2 earned runs in this game. The heroes of the Padres, after a miserable bottom of the 3rd inning in which they were losing 6-0. I love the way that they fought back in this one. Ha-Seong Kim drives them in with a double. Kyle Higashioka gets an RBI, who continues to just hit. It's amazing how much he continues to hit. Luis Arraez unfortunately kills the vibe a little bit. Luis Arraez, for what it's worth, has 16 double plays he's grounded into this year, and it's a slightly concerning trend, I will say. And the reason why I'm saying that is because he had 18 all of last year, and before that, he never hit into more than 10 double plays. I'm just keeping an eye on it. And what I'm saying is, you know, I'm hoping that this guy isn't heading for like falling off the cliff or anything like that. Now, all in all, he's still been okay with the Padres, 728 OPS, but still need more, man. This guy's got 339 on base percentage. He's got to be hitting more. He's got to be hitting more singles. You can't just be doing a 1 hit a game thing, right? Because that's just what he's been doing for a while. And him grinding into a double play really killed the vibe there. Yes, I understand that it allowed 1 run to score, but I was like, man, that was the last thing you could have done. Last thing you could have done, and he did it. So 16 double plays grounded into this year. He's got 10 with the Padres, which has been really, really frustrating. And again, never had that many beforehand. Never had that many. And I think that it's worth noting that he is unfortunately going to put the ball on the ground a lot. But that wasn't it. In the top of the 6th inning, Xander Bogaerts takes this man deep for a 2-run home run, making it 6-5. Unfortunately, in the bottom of the 8th inning, Ryan Mountcastle gets a single, allowing more runs to score, putting it out of reach. I've always talked about how Adrian Morejon still gives me this vibe that I don't trust him in the highest of high leverage situations. He's still very good. I think he's shown that his stuff has improved tremendously. Don't get me wrong. But all in all, he, you know, there's just something about him. Is it just me? I'm not using numbers either. This might be just some dumb niche hate for me, but there's something about him. And then in the bottom of the 9th inning, we have a little bit of drama in which the Padres are able to load the bases. Jurickson Profar gets a call that maybe wasn't a strike, making a 2-2 count. He grounds into a double play. Kyle Higashioka is initially called for runner's interference. It was a total bonehead, bad call. They do overturn it, so I'll give them that. Then there's a little bit of a bad strike call, the next batter, and then unfortunately, Jake Cronenworth does ground out to end the inning. But hey, you know what? They tried. I still like that they fought back. And if not for the Adrian Morejon giving up more runs, maybe they come back in this one. But all in all, it's okay because they still won the other 2. And let's talk about those other 2. First of all, Saturday's game, winning by a score of 9-4. Michael King, the God, 6 1/3 innings pitched, 9 strikeouts in this one, 2 earned runs. And by the way, the 2 earned runs, he only gave up 2 hits. They were inherited, unfortunately. They did take him out. And of course, this might shock y'all, but Stephen Kolek was unable to seal the deal. So he gives up 3 hits. And unfortunately, those runs do get charged to Michael King. But regardless, he was very good. You could argue he shouldn't have been in for the rest of the 6th inning, right? You could argue that they should have taken him out immediately. But frankly, I get it, right? This Padres team is really nervous about their bullpen. You can tell that Schilt doesn't trust anybody outside Estrada and Suarez, and then usually Adrian Morejon, right? Like, he's really nervous about that. But that was unfortunate, but it's okay because this was an offensive palooza. 1-for-4 game from our boy Higgy. That's okay. But we get 2 RBIs from Jackson Merrill on a single. We get a 3-for-5 game from Xander Bogaerts with not just a home run, but also 2 doubles. This man has been raking, and I'm going to shout it from the mountaintops. He looks good. He looks good. And here's the thing. He's hitting the ball harder. I'm getting excited, folks. There's 3 kind of points for why I was hopeful that Xander Bogaerts could be better. Number 1 is that, frankly, I don't believe it. You're telling me this guy's going to be a 70 WRC plus player all of a sudden? That's too much of a downgrade for me to believe it. Number 2, hey, there's other players that have, been with a new team and they struggle at first, and in some cases health related. Xander Bogaerts has had this wrist issue. You know who else had a weird injury? Carlos Correa. He was a disaster last year, and now he's the MVP of the Twins. And he's having one of his best seasons in years. So it's not impossible. And then the last reason is what we saw before the break. The hard hit rate went up, and he changed his bat to a little bit of a knob to help with his wrist. Guys looked absolutely tremendous ever since coming back off the IL. All of a sudden, his batting average is at 272. That's how good he's been so far. In July, he is hitting .512 with a .535 on base and a .634 slugging percentage, 1,100 OPS. Really, really good so far. Love to see the hard hit stuff too. Don't get me wrong, there have been some hits where I'm like, that's just a little bit lucky. But the home run from Sunday's game, the 2 doubles from this one, although one of them was a little bit weird, it was really ugly game. Or was that Friday? Was Friday the ugly game? I can't remember. Let me look it up real quick. I think it was Friday was the ugly game, my mistake. But all in all, love to see it from Xander Bogaerts. In my opinion, the revelation of this weekend, on top of Michael King, just going a Blake Snell run right now, just doing absolutely great, and I really love to see it. Also in this game, by the way, 3-for-5 for Manny Machado with 3 RBIs, 3-run home run. Dan Clark, if you're unfamiliar, is a little bit of a tool bag who covers baseball stuff, and he's, for a variety of reasons. Here's one thing I'll say. This guy famously said he won't go on anyone's show if people invite him unless you pay him, because that's spending his time or whatever. And I was like, okay, dude, you know what I mean? And everyone clowned him for that. It's like, really, man? Like, really? You think we got money out here? Us content creators, you think we got money? But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. And he tweeted, really excited to see, Manny Machado back in Baltimore tonight. I'm excited to see how much better Gunnar Henderson is. And Gunnar Henderson makes like 3 errors this weekend, and then Manny Machado hitting the home run yesterday was the icing on the top. I absolutely loved it. Also, 2 walks from Profar, 2 hits, and an intentional walk. Man, just keeps getting on base. So great win for the Padres overall. We're going to talk about Friday's game in just a second, guys, and an ugly baseball game that was, and then we're getting into the mailbag. Don't you worry. But first, I want to take a second to talk to you folks, you good, lovely, lovely folks. I'm in such a good mood, man. I'm in such a good mood. Padres are winning. Trade deadline's coming up. Got birthday celebrations for your boy tomorrow. It's just good vibes overall. But you know what else has good vibes? The folks over at Supply House, ladies and gentlemen. They have you covered for all the trades, the skilled trades that you may need assistance on. Let me tell you, it's great. Order supplies from the website that's made for the skilled trades. Find thousands of parts from hundreds of brands in just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com gives you 24-hour, 7 access to a huge selection of plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with fast delivery anywhere in the U.S. Need help with an order? Don't worry. You can get industry-leading after-sales advice from their friendly and knowledgeable customer support team and talk to a real person, not a robot or anything like that, every time. Talk to a real person, guys. And there's great news for plumbers, technicians, and contractors. Being a pro has its perks. Trade industry professionals can join their free Trademaster program for free shipping and serious discounts on every order. Over 100,000 pros already trust the Trademaster program to deliver results. So apply for your membership today and get a competitive edge on every order at supplyhouse.com/TM. Save money and time when you order online. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from Supply House. From Supply, not the doctor show, from supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service with Supply House. Go check it out. And just like that, folks, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and always vibing. Let's talk about the last game before we get into the mailbag, folks. And by the way, just want to say, we will be talking more about the Jason Adam trade. Like, don't worry, I'm not just going to do one segment on it and forget it. But it's just that, got to talk about this Orioles series. And also, I do think that I'm thinking about it, doing some sort of live show, either like Tuesday afternoon. Maybe that'll be the episode for Wednesday. I don't know just yet what we're going to do. But we'll see. And I will be, at the minimum, I'll be posting my short reactions in the moment that you guys can look forward to. Just want to throw that out there. But last game of the series, Padres win by a score of 6-4. Adam Mazur start. I know what you might be thinking. Oh, God, is this a mismatch? Because he went up against the ace, arguably, of the Baltimore Orioles, former top pitching prospect Grayson Rodriguez, who doesn't have the best start in the world. And Adam Mazur kind of does what bullpen guys do. He wasn't great, really, but 2 2/3, goes 1 inning. Gives up 1 earned run on 2 hits, 2 walks, and a strikeout. What's the theme with him? Always walking batters. He actually got sent back down to AAA El Paso, and I think they recalled Alec Jacob, actually, which is interesting. And by the way, Alec Jacob could be interesting, and I think that, sorry to double entendre, use the same word there, but I do think that Alec Jacob, on top of the Jason Adam thing, you might be looking at a completely retooled bullpen. I really do. I think that there's going to be some interesting things here. I think Jacob has some upside, and I think that Jason Adam is going to be a stud. So Padres bullpen worries may be behind them. The question is going to be if they could get another starter. But Austin Davis appears in this game. He makes a huge error, throwing the ball into outfield, trying to get the runner at second and turn a double play. Ugly, ugly game for both sides, by the way. So an errant throw by Austin Davis, and then later that same inning, Xander Bogaerts is unable to handle what could have been another double play ball, continuing the inning. And then later on in the game, Xander Bogaerts hits what is ruled a double, but Heston Kjerstad loses the ball, runs into the wall. It was an ugly game. Gunnar Henderson makes a throwing error, like all sorts of weird stuff, and I was just having a blast because of that aforementioned Dan Clark tweet making fun of Manny Machado. But all in all in this game, starts off with Jordan Westbrook hitting an absolute bomb, but the Padres basically just took over. Jurickson Profar, he hits a home run in the top of the 6th inning. Xander Bogaerts gets that double that was, lost a little bit by Kjerstad. And then Jackson Merrill rips a double right after that one. Bogaerts to score. Unfortunately, the bullpen, this might shock you, could not keep it going. What did I say? Adrian Morejon, he comes into this game, gives up 2 earned runs in 2/3. Again, he's shaky. Don't get me wrong, you have to go to him. His stuff is really good. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but man, there's still a vibe that, like, if this team makes the playoffs, I do not want this guy facing the heart of the other team's order in a close game. Use him in a different spot. I'm telling you, there's just something about him. But anyway, not great for him, but no matter. No matter, folks, as Jurickson Profar once again delivers. It is getting obscene. I'm not going to talk about it much more because, frankly, this offseason and for the rest of the season, regular season, we're going to be talking about Profar all the time because he is, and I tweeted this on Friday, this is my favorite single season I've ever had the privilege to watch of any player in the history of my time watching baseball. I have never enjoyed something more. It is in-friggin-sane what this man is doing this year. He is not only the MVP of the Padres, but frankly, if I were using some different logic, I think you can make an argument for him being the MVP of the National League. I know that there's other players out there. I understand he doesn't have the WAR and all that stuff, but what is more MVP than a guy who you got on a $1 million deal, going from the worst qualified player to one of the best qualified players? And he also has done this for a lineup that for most of the season was not delivering. He carried. I don't know where this team would be without him. This man has an OPS of 1,700 in high leverage situations. He's practically won them all these games by himself. What's more MVP than that? But Jurickson Profar, 2 home runs, including the go-ahead. And then the next day, I mentioned, 2 for 2, and then gets 2 walks and an intentional. Amazing stuff from Jurickson Profar. And no, I wasn't at all upset that he couldn't come through in yesterday's game. Come on. He can't come up every single time. But that about does it for the game recaps and whatnot, guys. Let's answer some of your questions. Thankfully, because how long this episode has been going, we didn't have too many questions this week. But of course, we always answer them. And we always seem to get one from my guy, Rama Murdy, who says, question for Monday's show. Can we manage without getting a bat till Tatis returns? If we are looking ahead to next season, how long and how much do we sign Profar for? Love the show and everything you do for us Padres fans. Of course, love you too, sir. I think we're going to save Profar for another time. Because in my opinion, this is like the Cody Bellinger situation. For those who don't follow, like that's an MVP player that then went and became like the worst qualified outfielder, or at least one of the worst hitting outfielders in the game for like 2 to 3 seasons. Then he had a super big bounce back last year. So everyone's like, what do we do with this? Profar is even weirder because this has been a guy that like at best was a 2.5 win player. And at worst, he's the worst qualified player in the sport or just the meh bench piece, right? And all of a sudden he's turned into Juan Soto Jr. You know what I mean? So I cannot wait what's going to happen. I think that San Diego will have a little bit of an advantage in keeping him. He clearly wants to be here, right? I feel like that's been made very, very clear. I don't know what we're looking at here, though. I really don't. I think you could get something similar to Cody Bellinger where it's a bunch of options. You know what I mean? I could see that, but we'll have to see. It's a fascinating thing, but I really do think the Padres should do whatever they can to keep him because some things are more than a stat sheet. And he's got the stats too. You know what I mean? We wanted him because of the vibes, and now he's also got the stats to prove it. And it's not like what he's doing this year is crazy, right? That's my thing with Profar. This is not like Cody Bellinger. There aren't the obvious warning signs that he played above his head. That is what's so exciting about Profar. For example, just if you look at weighted on base, his weighted on base is 384, which is really, really high. His expected is 373. That suggests he doesn't have a crazy drop off, right? Sure, maybe he's not going to be a 400 on base guy all the time, but that just tells me that this is a dude who has figured something out, right? Go check out the article on Fangraphs about his leg kick and his approach at the plate changing a bit, but that's just me. And then in terms of, what was your other question? Can we manage without getting a bat till Tatis returns? I think absolutely, because not only do you have Profar, not only have you had the bounce back from Cronenworth, not only have you had Jackson Merrill be a great, rookie of the year candidate, Xander Bogaerts looks like he's turning things around. Manny Machado's been turning things around. I think you can survive without him. This team has shown that you don't need a bat, right? You don't need one. Although I wouldn't mind someone to just replace a David Peralta or Bryce Johnson until he gets back for sure. I talked about Taylor Ward. He homered. He actually hit a grand slam the other day. I don't think he would cost too much. Maybe that's something he can do, and maybe he's got a little bit upside. I don't know. That's not what I'm saying. But you don't have to do anything crazy. That would be my thing. If you can't get anything big for the right price, then no. I would not worry about that as much. Now reading some other replies I got, just from Michael Troy Shorey on Twitter. Is it time to start giving Bogey some love? And then from Billy Friendo on Twitter. For Monday's pod, Xander is back, baby. Discuss. Yeah, I mean, he's been hitting the ball harder than ever. I mentioned it in the first segment, so I kind of already answered this already. But yeah, the Bogaerts stuff is really exciting. That bodes very well for the team. And this guy's been a winner before. So come playoff time, I want that type of presence. I want that leadership potentially and that experience to be there with the Padres, especially if he's actually hitting now. And he's hitting, and it's not just luck. I think that luck, it's important to bring that up because people were DMing me all the time in 2022 when Eric Hosmer was hitting above 300 for the first month. And my thing was like, unless he's Ricky Henderson, unless he's Ichiro Suzuki, he hits the ball on the ground and he's not fast. You know what I mean? So he was getting lucky, and then what happened? He was. But Bogaerts, I don't see that. The guy's hitting the ball very, very hard, and he's lifting it a little bit more. He looks more comfortable at the plate. He's swinging at first strikes more, which I like to see. Very, very good for Xander Bogaerts. So very excited about how that is trending. Another comment, this time coming from the old YouTube at MadStyle619. Padres need to look into Snell if possible, and Bauer looks great for pennies. How many times I'm just recommending everyone who keeps talking about Bauer to like think about how the world works for a second. I've seen Greg Hardy get signed. I've seen Deshaun Watson get signed. I've seen Mike Clevenger get signed. I've seen Aroldis Chapman get signed. I've seen Domingo Germán get signed. Guys, MLB had a neutral prosecutor, neutral arbiter, I think is what it was called. Let me be very clear. It was a neutral guy, come in and examine the evidence, and they said, oh no, this isn't good. Multiple women have accused him. He ain't coming back. And by the way, your boy just got lit up in the Mexican League. So please, no offense to the Mexican League, it's just not as good as Major League Baseball. Certainly not as good as Japan leagues or anything like that. Enough. I promise you, if this guy did not have that many problems, personal off-court stuff, off the baseball diamond, whatever you prefer, I promise you someone would have picked him up. This sport and sports in general is all about that. They know. Because then what happens is that discovery happens and everyone's going to see all the stuff that this guy's done. Oh, well, then he needs to sue for defamation. He's had defamation cases tossed multiple times. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Go ahead and do the lawsuit for the league. He's not going to. He's just saying that to get people like this commentator and others riled up as if he's being blackballed from the league. What are you talking about? Enough with Trevor Bauer. He's a loser. Anyway, I would love Blake Snell back. That would be awesome. I think that would be so funny if they somehow traded for him and then he opted in for next year. He's just for the boys, you know what I mean? For San Diego boys. I think that'd be so much fun. I don't see it though. An in-division trade like that and the Giants doing that, that would be embarrassing as hell for their organization too. So I don't see it, although it would be awesome because then you would be getting the good Snell, right? You guys had him for his ramp-up time. Now he comes back home where he knows how to pitch for us. Niebla's going to have the running. It would be great. I don't see it, though. I think that they're going to go for something else. Maybe a Jack Flaherty, maybe an Eric Feed, maybe a Yusei Kikuchi, maybe a Tyler Anderson, something like that. And I think who they go after will also show you what I think they think of Darvish and Musgrove's prospects. I.e., if they get some super ace type guy and give up a lot of prospects, that tells me that Musgrove and Darvish are out for a while. If they get someone who's just okay, that tells me they're like, we think we can get at least one of them back. So we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be interesting, though. Next up, folks, we have another YouTube comment that says from @JeffWyman, watch Cease being interviewed on ESPN, and he said that Ruben changed one thing after the All-Star break. He is holding his glove closer to his chest. He may have been giving away his pitches, and it has increased his velocity. 104 of his 114 pitches were either fastballs or sliders. So here's the thing. Now, I will say about your last comment, most of the time, I feel like Dylan Cease's repertoire is mostly fastballs and sliders. But the one thing I will say is, once again, I rarely listen to the commentating. I'm usually listening to music and putting on some other work. That's just me. I'm not dissing. I love listening to Don. I usually like listening to ESPN. But thank you, Jeff, for pointing that out. That would explain some things, right? Maybe he was tipping pitches accidentally. And maybe that's why opponents were able to tee off and not just hit him, but hit for home runs off of him. And he's always been a little bit susceptible to some hard contact. So that would explain some things. So thank you, Jeff, for keying in and hopefully helping the listeners and fools like me who listen to music during the games. I mean, what's wrong with you, Javi? Jesus. Anyway, @Koji_H on YouTube says, I'm a new Padres fan. This was the best game I've experienced so far. I saw the 2022 postseason series with the Dodgers, but wasn't a fan yet. And last year was disappointing, but man, this year is so much more fun to watch. Agreed. Even when it's bad, it's still so much better. And that's one thing we talked about with the Cease no-hitter is this season alone has given more, like, frankly, a month and a half into the season gave you more memorable Padres moments than all of 2023. And in general, even when they're not very good, this era of Padres baseball is easy as best it's been since the late 90s when they had that Ricky Henderson, Steve Finley, Ken Caminiti, all those guys, Tony Gwynn, obviously, on that team, and they lost to the Yankees in the World Series. This has easily been the most exciting they've been ever. And frankly, because of the ownership change, and the fact that they're willing to spend now, I would argue it's more exciting ever. That's right, including the 84 team. Because you actually have ownership that's like really down to spend. And they're like sexy and they get some of the big names. So that's just me. But again, what do I know? That's just my opinion, guys. That about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast. The only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow me on Twitter @Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, the best handle in the game. Look forward to tomorrow's episode when we talk a little bit more about some trade deadline stuff. I imagine something's going to come out. Frankly, I don't know that while I'm recording this episode, if something else is going to come out. But whatever it is, we will have you up to date. I would be shocked if this is all that AJ Preller does. It's a good move, don't get me wrong. But I would be shocked. I'd be like, really? No starter? Now, if he doesn't get a starter, maybe that means that Musgrove and Darvish might be coming back. But even if they are, they're still injury prone, right? So I'm very curious to see what happens at this deadline. And I'm also just hoping that no one in the division gets too much better. The Diamondbacks added AJ Puck recently. Hopefully, you don't get too much. I'm curious, though. Got another day, folks. And yes, we're going to see if we do some live shows. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then it'll notify you if I do decide to go live. And if I do go live, it'll probably be like at the trade deadline on the dot. So that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm leaning towards. So, folks, I'll catch you then. But until next time, stay safe. And, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take